Hi, everybody. I'm Majid, the founder of SOMA MATER, and we're here at Organic Fest at the Emirates Bio Farm. Today with us, we've got Paul Newnham, who is leading the Chef's Manifesto. Thank you, Paul, for joining us today.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. What a beautiful spot.
Yeah, we should consider ourselves lucky. And I know me and the production team, Mo, we're thinking, how many times can we record here? I would like to start because when we talk about organic agriculture and being here at the farm, it isn't the first thought that people are thinking about chefs. And I wanted to know, from your perspective, what's the role of the chef and, people that prepare our food in being able to advocate or at least showcase what organic agriculture and sustainable agriculture can do?
Look, the chefs that we work with around the world, they are connecting ingredients. They're taking ingredients and they're combining them into flavors that remind us of home, of tradition, of culture, that create joy, that blend celebration. And so ingredients are so critical, and how they're grown actually makes such an impact on the flavor, the nutritional density, the way that those ingredients perform in different dishes. And so I think organic agriculture has a tremendous potential for creating great ingredients. And you look around at the farm here and you just see beauty.
Yeah.
And this creates a starting point, a base for creating amazing food. And so chefs who care about really driving change are able to access those ingredients, to use them, to bring them together, to create the flavors, to create the food that we enjoy. I think chefs have a unique role because they can speak to some of the impacts of our food system, not only on the planet and the soil and the environment, but also on us. And so they can bridge that gap. And knowing where the food comes from, the ingredients come from, is the starting point for that.
And because you're running a global platform, I wonder, what is it that chefs from different regions share when it comes to that? Everybody always thinks about, well, we cook our way and, this is our thing, whether it's culturally or sort of heritage food. But what is it? Do you run any programs where chefs are exchanging across the globe and finding commonality in that?
Yeah. So I think, one of the things that we running the Chef's Manifesto network, which has chefs from over 100 countries, is you find that in every part of the world, there are similar but different challenges.
Yeah.
No environment is the same.
Yeah.
So like we're here in the middle of the desert in a very dry environment, and we have challenges around water. Water is front of mind.
Yeah.
In other parts of the world, water can be front of mind, but for the opposite reason, because it's above your head, because of flooding and the destruction. So you have to think about the context. You have to think about the environment. And I think chefs in different spaces, whether it's high in the mountains or down at the coast, they adapt the menu to that environment. The ingredients, the freshness of those ingredients, the accessibility, the flavor profiles are all going to impact. And so as we bring people together, what they can do is talk about different issues. So for example, food waste.
Yeah.
In a city, London chef has a very different challenge around waste and how to manage waste than a chef in, say, Nigeria or in, Bangladesh.
Yeah.
So in Nigeria, we were talking about food waste, and they said, well, what happens when the power goes off for 2-3 days a week? Well, that's a very different environment. And so we have to challenge the way that we look at food waste. Whereas in London, they're looking at garbage being picked up only twice a week. Where do they store it?
Yeah.
How do you reduce the waste? So there's same issue, different concept. But then you can look at solutions and go, what are the processing, the preservation techniques, and how do you utilize them to preserve, to create, use those waste streams in different ways and create value from them. So as you get that conversation going, the context and the cultures enable learning. They enable us to think differently. They enable us to be able to come up with solutions about our own space from hearing what others are talking about.
We talked earlier on about farmers and chefs having a relationship that's sort of interrupted with a supply chain. And I was talking about, getting farmers to chefs. And you said, well, actually, the challenge is those farmers have full days of work and can barely get away. What is it like when you're bringing the chefs into the farming ecosystem and doing tours? What do you feel is the key part of that, and what might we learn from that for the general public?
Yeah, look, I think if you're bringing chefs into the farm, the challenge is you need to find people that can communicate. You need people that can bridge. And I think this is the same in most spaces. It's like quite a skill to work out how do you communicate the challenges so that you're not just complaining about you don't do this or you want this or you want that, but actually really going, help me understand, like, how do you see the ingredients when they're arriving? Why do you want them in this way?
Right.
What does that mean? But then also for the chef to see and go, well, what are you doing with that? Hey, you always cut that off. Like, it might be you cut all the green around and you just give me the little vegetable in the middle. And they go, but I could use that.
Yeah.
That's not a waste stream. It's actually something. So there's a mutuality, I think, in bringing those streams together and reconnecting those connections which have been broken by our supply chain. Because often there's people in between making choices.
Right.
Which neither party, the farmer nor the chef, are actually involved in.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's more about logistics or transport or beauty or efficiency or something.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it's that kind of reconnecting and rebuilding that relationship, which communication is critical for.
There's a beautiful example from a friend of mine, shout out Andre, where he was visiting an organic farmer here.
Yeah.
And they were looking at organic zucchini.
Yeah.
And he's just watching them pull the flowers off and throw them aside. And he turns and he goes, what are you doing with those? And the farmer's like, well, throw them away or they go back into the compost. He's like, could I have those? He's like, yeah, sure. And of course, stuffed zucchini flowers like
it becomes a
delicacy. And it's funny because we find so many examples in cultural foods or just globally foods that are taking what might seem like the least nutritious or the least valuable piece and suddenly become delicacy or something that's high end, cuisine. What have you seen in your many years now doing this as the sort of big lesson or innovation that you always think back to about like, okay, yeah, this is working. I saw something, it changed a farming system or a farmer's life or a chef's approach that you're like, okay, we've got something that's working.
So, I mean, to me, it's about often all of us are living lives in which there is so much information coming. We're under pressure to perform, to be able to deliver. We're running businesses, family. Yeah. There's lots going on. Life is busy.
Yeah.
And media and all of the pressures of that kind of spins faster and faster. Yes. And so I think sometimes it's about slowing down. It's taking a little bit of a step across and actually thinking about what are we doing. And what I've seen is that when you can bring people together in the right environment, you can kind of pull out and you can create an opportunity for people to really think differently and then to be able to identify opportunities to work together. And those opportunities are like what you said around, the zucchini flower. But we never used to waste all this food.
Right. Yeah.
We now waste it for a whole range of reasons. But it's because we're producing it in such a scale and there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
If we can reconnect not only the relationships with people and also the relationships to the ingredients and the spaces, I think we can then start to repair that. And I've seen when people gather around the table, they break bread, they share, they talk, they build relationship, that connection starts to happen. And so to me, that's still the most important, it's those bringing people together around tables in spaces where they can actually learn from one another and reconnect. And then across cultures, you see learnings across different styles of cooking. And so, I mean, to me, that's always been part of the challenge is that the busyness of life has meant that we've broken the system and we've broken down and we've seen these breaks and these breaks then have to be repaired. And so it's hard because it takes time. It takes energy. It takes a shift. You've got to get together and do something. But when you do that, it's incredibly powerful and it's when real change happens.
Paul, I couldn't have said it better myself. I honestly, you've reinvigorated our ethos on bringing people together, and it's also what we try to do at SOMA MATER. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for
it's a pleasure.
Detouring your flights to be part of Organic Fest, and we look forward to having you here tomorrow as well,
yes,
and to speaking more in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.